Before I talk about American politics, I should at least try to identify the different states in the United States of America. There are 50 of them. I have been able to label 41 of them. The other 9 I could not label because there's just not enough space available to write the numbers in the area designated to these states. So once I get to number 41, I'll try to mention correctly the location of the 9 other states, which are visible in this picture, but there's not enough space for me to inscribe in the area provided to those states. So we'll start with 1. The state labeled 1 here is Washington. Number 2 is Oregon. Number 3 is California. Number 4 is Alaska. Number 5 is Idaho. Number 6 is Nevada. Number 7 is Arizona. 8 is Utah. 9 is Montana. 10 is Wyoming. 11 is Colorado. 12 is New Mexico. 13 is Texas. 14 is Oklahoma. 15 is Kansas. 16 is Nebraska. 17 is South Dakota. 18 is North Dakota. 19 is Minnesota. 20 is Iowa. 21 is Missouri. 22 is Arkansas. 23 is Louisiana. 24 is Wisconsin, although the entire area should not have been shaded in one color because the northern part of Wisconsin is actually part of Michigan state. 25 is Illinois. 26 is Kentucky. 27 is Tennessee. 28 is Mississippi. 29 is Alabama. 30 is Georgia. 31 is Florida. 32 is South Carolina. 33 is North Carolina. 34 is Virginia. 35 is West Virginia. 36 is Ohio. 37 is Indiana. 38 is Michigan. 39 is Pennsylvania. 40 is New York State, and 41 is Maine. So we have to get to 9 more states. First up at the very bottom of the screen is Hawaii, the islands, the chain of islands that is Hawaii in the Pacific Ocean. 42 is the state just. So 42 is Hawaii. 43 is the state just to the west of Maine, that is New Hampshire. 44 is to the west of New Hampshire, Vermont. 45 is the state just south of both New Hampshire and Vermont, that is Massachusetts. 46 is south of Massachusetts, Connecticut. 47 is to the east of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, which is not an island, it is mostly in the mainland. 48 is New Jersey, just to the south of New York State and to the east of Pennsylvania. 49 is Delaware, just to the south of New Jersey, and 50 is to the south of Delaware, that is the state of Maryland. So there you have it, 50 states in the United States of America. For those of you who are of a suspicious nature, here is the Googled list of the 50 states in the United States of America, and if you intend to do so, you can compare this with the states I named, and you will notice that I have got all the states correct. I started paying attention to American presidential elections 2004 onwards. In 2004, the Republican Party nominee for president was the sitting president of the United States, George W. Bush, and the Democratic nominee was John Kerry. The nominees for presidents is decided by a process known as primary. In the primaries, people cast their vote to decide who the nominee from each political party is going to be in the presidential elections, which are typically held in November. So, if one wants to become president, one needs to get to the 270 mark in the Electoral College. American presidents do not win elections by winning the majority of the popular vote. They become president by getting to 270 in the Electoral College. Now, Electoral College is decided by fixed contributions to it by different states. Some states have more contribution, like California has 55, Texas has 34, whereas states like Montana only contribute 3 votes to the Electoral College. So, as you can see on the map here, in 2004, George W. Bush won 31 of the 50 states in the United States. However, this did not translate into a landslide victory. George W. Bush did win the election. He got 286 Electoral College votes, whereas John Kerry got 251. Now, in this video, we will try to identify those states which have consistently voted for the Democratic Party 2004 onwards, and those states which have consistently voted for the Republican Party 2004 onwards. I have picked 2004 as the arbitrary year because this is the year from which I started paying attention to American presidential elections. Some states, you will notice, always vote for the Republican Party, some states always vote for the Democratic Party. The presidential election in the United States is largely decided by those states which do not vote consistently for either party. These states are known as swing states or the battleground states. Basically, these states decide who is going to become the next president of the United States. So in this video, we will try to identify which states will play the most pivotal role in the 2024 US presidential election. In 2004, as you can see here in the West Coast, John Kerry won Washington, Oregon, and California. In about the center of the United States, John Kerry won Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Michigan. And towards the east, John Kerry won in Maine, in New Hampshire, in Vermont, in New York, in Pennsylvania, in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, in Connecticut, in New Jersey, in Delaware, and in Maryland. He also won in DC, that is the District of Columbia, and also in Hawaii. Now let's move on to 2008. In 2008, the Democratic nominee for President of the United States was Barack Obama, and the Republican nominee for the President of United States was John McCain. Now you might be wondering, why did George W. Bush not contest the election again? This is because of something known as the 22nd Amendment, which clearly states that no person can run for a third presidential term in the United States. People can serve as the President of the United States for 2 terms only. This came into being in 1947, and it was believed to be a reaction to Franklin D. Roosevelt winning 4 consecutive terms to the office of President of the United States. People did not want somebody to be the President of the United States for an unspecified period of time, so the maximum period for which somebody could be President was limited to 2 terms. Now, as you can see on the map here, Barack Obama had a great electoral performance. He won 365 electoral college votes, whereas John McCain managed to win 173. Now let's look at the states won by Barack Obama, and you would notice that he won many states that subsequently Democrats did not win in the rest of the 21st century. So Barack Obama won in Washington or Oregon, California, just like John Kerry, but he also won in Nevada. Obama won in New Mexico and Colorado. And on the East Coast, Obama won Florida. Obama also won in North Carolina. He managed to win in Virginia. He won in DC, in Maryland, in Delaware, in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, in New York, in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. So all of the East Coast. Let me repeat: Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. Towards the center of the United States, Obama won in Minnesota, in Iowa, in Wisconsin, in Illinois, in Indiana, in Ohio, and in Michigan. And also he won in Hawaii. So he got 365 electoral college votes, which is basically a modern day landslide. Let's move on to 2012, where Obama went up against Mitt Romney. In 2012, Barack Obama was the President of the United States, and he fought the US presidential election against the Republican nominee Mitt Romney. As you can see on the map here, Barack Obama's performance was not as good as his performance in 2008, but he still managed to win 332 electoral college votes, and Mitt Romney only won 206. So as you can see on the map here, Obama was able to retain his states on the West Coast, that is Washington, Oregon, California, as well as Nevada. He again won Colorado and New Mexico. Obama was able to win Florida once again. And on the East Coast, again, Obama won in Maine, in New Hampshire, in Vermont, in New York, in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in DC, in Maryland, in Delaware, as well as Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Obama was able to win in Virginia, but he did not win in North Carolina. Obama was able to win in Ohio and Michigan, but he did not win in Indiana. Obama won in Illinois and Wisconsin. He once again won in Iowa, and he also won in Minnesota. So, of course, Obama won in Hawaii as well. So he got 332 electoral college votes in 2012, which was less than the 365 he managed in 2008. In 2016, the US presidential election was fought between Donald Trump from the Republican Party and Hillary Clinton was the nominee for the Democratic Party. 2016 was possibly the most shocking US presidential election results for as long as one can remember. In 2016, the Republican presidential nominee was Donald Trump and the Democratic nominee was Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was believed to be the favorite, but the election was won by Donald Trump, who got 304 electoral college votes, and Hillary Clinton only managed 227. Now, if you look at the map here, in 2016, Hillary Clinton was able to win Washington, Oregon, California, and Nevada. She was also able to win in Colorado and New Mexico. Clinton won in Minnesota. She won in Illinois. And Clinton was also able to win in Maine, in New Hampshire, in Vermont, in New York, in Massachusetts, in Connecticut, in Rhode Island, in New Jersey, in Delaware, in Maryland, in DC, and she also won in Virginia. But Clinton was not able to win in solid blue states like Pennsylvania or in Michigan or even in Wisconsin. So this really did affect her performance, and Clinton was also able to win in Hawaii. So Donald Trump became the president of the United States in 2016. He secured 304 seats in the electoral college, and most people think he won the election because he was able to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, as well as Florida. Let's look at the 2020 presidential election fought between the incumbent president Donald Trump and the Democratic nominee Joe Biden. In 2020, Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee for president. He went up against the incumbent president Donald Trump, who of course belongs to the Republican Party. Joe Biden was able to win the election by securing 306 electoral college votes, whereas Donald Trump only managed 232. As you can see on the map here, Joe Biden was able to win in Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, and also Arizona. He was able to win in New Mexico and Colorado, and he also won in Georgia. Joe Biden also won in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan. On the East Coast, Joe Biden won in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, DC, and also won in Hawaii. So let's now look at which states have consistently voted for the Democratic Party in 2004, 2008, 2012, 2016, and 2020, and which states have stayed Republican 2004 till 2020. Then we will move on to those states which have switched allegiances, and we will be able to focus on the key battleground states in the 2024 presidential elections. Now let's look at those states which have consistently voted for Republicans since 2004. There are 20 in number. And states that have voted for Democrats since 2004 in every presidential election, that's 16 in number. So we have 14 states that have voted for either side in the presidential elections since 2004. This may have been due to the unique appeal generated by a particular candidate, or maybe gradually a particular state has moved from the Republican side to the Democratic side and vice versa. So let's name these 14 states and then we'll look at them individually. So these 14 states are Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Florida. Let's look at them individually to understand whether they are significant players in the 2024 election or not. Now, while we have named 14 states as those states which have not consistently voted for either the Republicans or the Democrats since 2004, all 14 of these states cannot be called swing states or battleground states. Let's look at them one by one. Let's start with Nevada. Nevada is a state which was won by George W. Bush in 2004, but ever since it has consistently voted for the Democratic candidate. So, Nevada in 2024 can be expected to be carried by the Democratic candidate. So, Nevada, I would believe, is not a battleground state. Now, let's move on to Arizona. Arizona was won by every Republican nominee till 2020, 2004 onwards. In 2020, Joe Biden was able to win in Arizona, but I don't think Arizona is a battleground state. It is a solid Republican state. New Mexico was won by George W. Bush in 2004, but once again, like Nevada, it has voted for the Democratic candidate ever since. So, New Mexico also is not a battleground state but a solid Democrat state. Now, Colorado again was won by George W. Bush in 2004, but ever since has voted for the Democratic candidate. So, Colorado again is a Democrat state, not a battleground state. Let's move on to Iowa. Iowa has voted for Republican candidates in the recent past, except 2008 and 2012 when Barack Obama was on the ticket. So, one would believe that this may have been due to the individual charisma of Barack Obama. Iowa also is not a battleground state, it is a Republican state, in my opinion. Moving on to Indiana. Indiana again is perhaps the best example of the individual appeal of Barack Obama, the candidate. He was able to win in Indiana in 2008. Every other edition since 2004 has been won by the Republican candidate. So, Indiana also cannot be considered a battleground state, it is a Republican state. In Ohio, Ohio was believed to be a battleground state for the longest time. In 2004, Ohio was won by George W. Bush. In 2008 and 2012, it was won by Barack Obama. In 2016 and 2020, it was won by Donald Trump. So, Ohio can be believed to be a Republican state now. Virginia was won by George W. Bush, but like Nevada, New Mexico, and Colorado, it has voted for Democratic nominees ever since. So, Virginia again is not a battleground state, it is a Democrat state. North Carolina again was a battleground state, very famous battleground state. It was won by George W. Bush in 2004 and Obama in 2008, but ever since 2008 it has been won 3 consecutive times by the Republican nominees. So, I would believe North Carolina also is not a battleground state, it is mostly a Republican state. Now, let's move on to Florida. Florida was won in 2004 by George W. Bush, in 2008 and 12 by Barack Obama, and ever since by Donald Trump. So, Florida also has largely leaned towards the Republican side in the recent past, and Florida is no longer a battleground state, it is mostly a Republican state. Let's look at Georgia. Georgia consistently voted for Republican nominees. In 2020, however, it was won by Joe Biden, but in 2024, Georgia is largely expected to vote for the Republican nominee. So, this brings us, so we've covered 11 of the 14. Let's come to the 3 states which I do believe are battleground states and which will decide the fate of the presidential elections. Wisconsin. Wisconsin was won consistently by the Democratic nominee since 2004, but in 2016, Trump was able to win there. In 2020, Biden won there, but in 2024, this is difficult to predict. So, Wisconsin is a battleground state. Michigan is another battleground state. It was won by the Democratic nominee in 2004, 2008, 2012, and in 2020, but Trump was able to win in 2016. So, Michigan also will be an interesting state to watch out for. And the final battleground state, in my opinion, is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was won in 2004, 2008, 2012 by Democratic nominees, and also in 2020 by Joe Biden, but in 2016 Donald Trump won there. Now let's look at the electoral college votes and which states will determine this. I've identified three battleground states. Pennsylvania has 20 electoral college votes, Michigan has 16, and Wisconsin has 10. So let's add up the other states' electoral college votes, because I believe I have been able to place them in Republican and Democrat baskets and see if the race is already over or not. Now let's get into the meat of the discussion. We have clearly identified the states that have consistently voted for the Democratic Party. We have also identified those states that have moved from the Republican side towards the Democratic side 2004 onwards, and including all the likely Democratic leaning states, we see that the Democratic nominee for President of the United States is likely to get 224 seats in the Electoral College, which is far short of the 270 mark. If the three battleground states that I've identified, that is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, also vote Democrat, then the Democratic candidate gets up to 268, which is also short of the 270 mark. So it would be safe to assume the Republican candidate is the favorite to win in 2024, and it will be interesting to see if the Democratic candidate can pull off an upset.